I was struggling. I was in a really bad place.
I found out that I wasn't legally married.
My feelings had died out and I was just suffering in that relationship.
Islamically, he already gave me the 3 talaqs.
I was desperate to get divorced, so Jav's helped us out a lot.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters with me, your host, Javaid Iqbal. Now, the show's called Marriage Matters, but what is marriage? What is an Islamic marriage? And what is an Islamic divorce? Now, there's many views, many philosophies, many theories. You know, everybody's got their own opinion, extrapolating from the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. I'm joined this evening by Yasin Mohammed. Yasin is an expert, I would say, in Islamic law. He's got a master's in Islamic law. He's got a master's in judicial review. He's got a degree in law. And I believe he's also got a 10-meter swimming badge. But I think we can ask him. Yasin, can you hear me?
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you doing? You okay?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and taking time out from what I can only assume is a busy schedule.
It's quite all right.
Brilliant. Yasin is a barrister and he practices in many areas, one of them which is Islamic law, to, I would say, quite a high and expert sort of level, being involved in numerous court cases as well with regards to Islamic divorce. Now, Yasin, let's start from the top. Now, everybody says, I've had my Nikkah done, I've got a Nikkah Nama. What is, and I know some of these topics that we're going to talk about, once you pull one strand, another 100 appear. So as an overview to the layperson, what is the definition of a Nikkah and what does it entail and what makes up a Nikkah?
First of all, can I just start off saying that the views I'm going to express are my personal opinions insofar as what the law is as far as Nikkahs are concerned. There are 5 schools of thought, you must remember that, insofar as the Islamic view are concerned. You have the Shafi'i, Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, and Imamiyya, more commonly known as the Shia view. Now, what is a Nikkah? Is a Nikkah in terms of the law in this country? Well, yes and no. The starting point for a Nikkah really is it's a contract. It's an agreement between 2 parties who have agreed under the auspices and the union of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they will live together as man and wife. That contract is in essence the agreement. Hence why when a person gets married under a Nikkah, they're not really asked anything apart from do they consent, do they consent, do they consent. The reason they're asked that question, the Kabul question, is do they consent to this contract being created? And Islamically, that's where they start from, is from a contractual relationship. You have to remember, with the advent of Islam, prior to that, women were treated effectively as property, chattels, and they were treated in what can only describe as inhumane ways, because men would marry, men would divorce them, and Islam came along and effectively put an end to that by saying, hang on, a person has rights. And how do we document those rights? Effectively by creating a contract. And that contract, in essence, then guaranteed the woman rights and protected her insofar as those rights are concerned. Now, without going into the fine details of it, because we don't have enough time, because you've asked me to talk on 2 particular subjects, each one of them we could discuss for hours on end. So what I'm trying to do is summarize and create a precis of what everything is. This is in no way a comprehensive overview of the Islamic law insofar as Nikkahs are concerned. This is a general view that's being expressed in order for me to convey to individuals what a Nikkah is, where does it come from. Effectively, it comes from the Quran. When you look at the Quran, it really sets out what the premises of your Nikkah is. It then sets out how you should treat each other, how you should treat the other person, but it also then deals with the issues of when the relation comes to an end. We'll deal with that part more so in the second part when I consider the issue of what a talaq is. But a Nikkah in its simplest form is an agreement between 2 parties.
It's just a contract. It's a contract between 2 people using, would you say, under the auspices of God, using God as a witness, or using, obviously, the declarations made by God in how the agreement is to be formed?
Not quite, because what there is, there's a horizontal covenant and a vertical covenant. And now let me explain that. We as Muslims, when we take the Shahada, we make a declaration in our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Nabi Rasulullah being the last messenger.
Absolutely.
When we make that declaration, we are subscribing ourselves to the hukum, to the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which are contained within the Quran and which are supplemented by the Sunnah, which at times can actually be the law because of the principles of Naqsh. But that is something not for today to be discussed, but in its simplest form, your vertical covenant, your promise to God, which is on the vertical line, effectively is, I will abide by your laws, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I, as a Muslim, will do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Now, on the horizontal line is your agreement with human beings, every other individual who exists on this planet. Because of the vertical covenant, your promise to God that you will be a good Muslim, you then have to take it on the horizontal line and extend it to everybody. And that is where the premise is extended as far as marriage is concerned as well. So effectively, your belief in God should be the basis of your relationship, which then takes place. And from there, you should then follow the rules and the laws as far as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in terms of compliance with how you treat each other. It's not a one-way street. The nikahs are not one way, they are two ways. The easiest example I can give you is this. Under contract law, which is governed by Roman law, you have offer, acceptance, consideration, intention to create a legal relationship. Nikah is exactly the same. You have an offer, the offer of marriage. You have the acceptance of the marriage. You then have the consideration, which is often known as the haq mer, but that's another complicated area, which I'll just briefly touch on. That's a consideration. And then the intention. Well, you have witnesses present that you will live together, you will abide by the laws of your vertical covenant, which you now extend horizontally to that person, and that then forms the basis of the contract, which is no different in reality to a contract under English law. You do exactly the same.
Yeah.
For example,
so there's two parties and something in the middle. There's something in the middle is the marriage, and you've got two parties on either side, basically.
Effectively, it's with any contract. If you say we're to purchase a house, or a car, there is that agreement between you and the other party. The difference being under English law, insofar as contracts are concerned, you have a right of remedy if the other person breaches it.
Yeah.
Now, here comes the issue, Mr. Iqbal, insofar as nikahs are concerned. If the nikah is not registered, meaning it's not conducted by an imam, which follows then the Marriage Act of 1949, the specific procedures, i.e. give notice, marriage at a registered place, the imam is registered, open doors, witnesses. If those criteria are not met, then it is not a marriage recognized by the law.
It's a defective. It's what we call defective. And this is we've had many discussions about this with other guests as well, where they're not registering, or the people are reading the marriage, the nikah, are not registered. I know there's certain mosques that do it. Majority of the time, unfortunately, it's not. It's some imam, a couple of guests, big hall, boom, bash, bosh.
Well, it is a big hall because in reality, what they're known as is non-qualifying ceremonies. They actually have a legal name. So it's a ceremony which has taken place, but for the purposes of the Marriage Act is not regarded as a qualifying ceremony. Therefore, it falls outside the protection of the English law. Here is where the law of the Sharia, in essence, should apply to the nikah which is in existence. But you may have seen nikah names as well, and I have seen them.
I've seen many nikah names, unfortunately.
Say name, address, date of birth,
father's name,
bridegroom's
name, witnesses, that's it. Dowry, that's it.
Yeah, and then in the Maher section, usually some are 500s. There's a reason for the 500, but usually a figure of 500 or some form is, and that's it.
Yeah, that's all in the Nikkah Nama. That's it.
Yeah, but that is not what the Nikkah Nama should be.
We're talking Islamically here.
I am talking Islamically here.
Okay. That's interesting.
For the simple reason, where is your agreement that you will comply with the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in there? You're not setting them out.
Sorry,
Surah Al-Nisa, if you go to Surah Al-Nisa, it sets out the women's rights.
I know, but sorry, just to stop you there for 1 second, I'm just going to ask a question which I'm sure you've seen and I've seen, isn't that compliance when they're reading the verses to you and you're reading back to them, or when they're making the dua, or they're telling you to read certain things back? Is that not the covenant?
If that was a covenant...
I mean, am I backing up the wrong tree?
Oh, no. I'm just going to throw this back to you, effectively. If that's the covenant that's being made, then why do we find Muslim women who are issued talaqs and then told they have no rights? They have no proprietary rights.
But isn't that more of a societal issue than anything else?
No, it's not moral. How can it be a moral? Because where's your vertical covenant gone with God?
I know, but no. What I'm saying is that's more a societal issue in the sense
It's not societal. It's far from societal, because effectively what you're saying is I will apply the law of Islam when I want to marry someone.
Yeah.
The minute I decide I want to rip that contract up,
I will not. Are off.
Then all of a sudden, what contract?
Yeah, but
what's my obligations?
We get that in our communities, though. You've seen that. You know, I always say at the beginning, we're all gung-ho. At the back end, it's like, oh, I don't really care. Yasin, stay right there. We're just going to go for a short break, and inshallah, we'll be back and discussing this with a lot more detail. We'll see you on this side. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need help with your marriage? Do you suspect infidelity in your marriage? Are you struggling to gain the truth over a matter of concern? Whatever the concern, we're here to try and help. Email us for free support today at marriagematters@britishmuslim.tv.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Marriage Matters with me, your host, Javaid Iqbal. We're still in discussion with Yasin. Yasin, are you there, yeah?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Sorry, you were talking about the Nikkah, and obviously we discussed that, obviously under English law, it's defective, i.e. it's not recognised because it's not conducted in the right manner. Obviously here they don't recognise Sharia law, they don't recognise defective ceremonies, which obviously is governed by the Marriage Act 1949. Now, going forward a little bit from there, you were saying that obviously the Nikkah is a contract between two people under the covenant of God, the vertical and the horizontal. Let me ask you another question is, who has the right to decide what goes in and what goes out of the Nikkah Nama? And the reason I ask that is because you probably know as well as I do, is very, very rarely do the two parties involved, and you're already smiling, the two parties involved, do they have a say over what goes on in the Nikkah Nama? The most they're allowed to do is sign. And I'm talking out personal experience as well, and I'm sure maybe, perhaps the same thing happened with you as well.
Well, let me explain that in two ways, right? One of the things you raised earlier, you said this was a cultural aspect, right? In part it is. Now, in terms of Muslims being present in this country, historically, we can document it all the way back. The earliest documentation is in the Elizabethan time. I think a woman called Sultana Aurora, who was in the court of Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
She's the earliest documented Muslim. The first Muslim mosques, there's a dispute as to where it was, whether it's Woking in London or Liverpool, both in about 1890, somewhere in that period.
It was in Woking. It's in Woking. I've been to it.
Well, no, there is an actual argument over...
I'm saying it's in Woking. My cousin told me so.
Yeah, or I will accept. But what the point I'm trying to make is there's been a substantial Muslim presence in this country, but post the Second World War, that's when the change took place. There was a mass migration from the Indian subcontinent. Prior to, effectively, just post-partition, you had individuals from Pakistan, from India, and from what eventually became Bangladesh in 1971, all came to the United Kingdom. And when they came, now they developed an unusual attitude as far as Islam was concerned. There are two academics, Pearl and Minsky, who researched this particular area, and they came up with a particular phrase to describe how the early Muslims were behaving in this country. They referred to them implementing what's called Angrezi Shariat. Angrezi, for your non-South Indian, effectively means English. And what they noted was the first Muslims who arrived were not aware of the British law. And secondly, when they became aware of their non-compliance, it may cause legal issues. They then effectively sought to rank the Sharia above the English law in the way they understood it. Now, let's go look at the time frame, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. Those were the very early generations. The Imams did not come. The Ulama did not come. It was the ordinary working class people who migrated primarily from northern Pakistan to the United Kingdom. So they found themselves in a situation living in a foreign land and effectively thinking, well, what should we do? Therefore, they adapted. And when they adapted, they created this Angrezi Sharia. I don't subscribe to it. I've read the papers on it, but I respect the authors of it because from a theological point of view, it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as Angrezi Sharia. What they're trying to describe is what you would normally call cultural Islam. This is how they developed.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but it's more. But the thing is that there's still a disconnect you can have between Islam and culture. Now, my understanding and my sort of experiences, having spoken to, I mean, my dad came in 1957. He was one of the very, very early immigrants. Is that culture always held more sway over the Islamic aspect of life?
Yes, that's right. But because again, when you look back to the Indian subcontinent, first of all, Islam arrived in the Indus Valley as we know it in around the 12th century, which was more than 600 years later than when Islam started in the Arabian Peninsula. And as you will be aware, the four Rashidans, the four first caliphs of Islam, were elevated to the point that they were the classed as the rightly guided. Thereafter, you had the Abbas and the Umayyads effectively fighting over who had the right over Islam. In that period, there were many things which did not occur correctly. And by the time Islam moved to the Indian subcontinent, it was not the purest form which arrived. But what complicated matters further was the schism, the division that arose then in the Indian subcontinent. Is predominantly Hanafi school of thought, but that is broken down into the Brelvi and Deobandis.
Yeah.
These are the subgroups which then came to the surface. When you then cross-reference that with the Wahhab subsection, which was prevalent in the late 18th and the 19th century, because you must remember the house of Ibn Saud and Ibn Wahhab, although they may be effectively running Saudi Arabia today, their roots go back much further in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they had influences as well. But when these individuals, what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is this. The Islam which was adopted by my parents, just like yours, my father came in the 1950s, just like yours did. My mother was in the United Kingdom in the 1960s.
Yep.
I was born here, effectively, but I was raised not with an understanding of Islam as what it should be, but as what they thought it was.
That's what it is. Be. But then how do you break that? How do you again, we've got that cultural sort of...
we don't. It's something...
infighting between the older generation and the new generation.
What older generation? Effectively, we're now third and fourth generation Muslims.
You'd be shocked that people still have... Fighting? I know, but you'd be shocked. Listen, I've done cases, you've done cases, where this mindset is still prevalent. It's still there.
It's ingrained. The mindset is ingrained in individuals because people choose the inequality. They choose the power. Because essentially, that is what it is. It is a power struggle between two individuals, a male and a female.
And a female. And it is a patriarchal society. Yasin, stay right there. We have to take a quick short break for the Maghrib Azan. So inshallah, we'll see you after the Azan. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you on the other side. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need help with your marriage? Do you suspect infidelity in your marriage? Are you struggling to gain the truth over a matter of concern? Whatever the concern, we're here to try and help. Email us for free support today at marriagematters@britishmuslim.tv.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Marriage Matters with me, your host, Javaid Iqbal. We're still joined by Yasin, and we were talking about the Nikkah ceremony, and you were telling us a little bit about the history. Obviously, a lot of our elders, first, second generation, came from the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, etc., and how Islam obviously got into there, and then that's the Islam that they have then brought to the UK. But even then, it's been diluted further because, like you said, the Imams, etc., the scholars didn't come till probably, I don't know, I'm guessing here the 70s or the late 60s. And my dad tells me this. He goes, obviously, when they arrived my dad came in 1957. So he goes, when they first came, there wasn't a multitude of mosques and there wasn't people that you could go to and, you know, get Islamic rulings or, you know, Islamic advice, etc. Now, do you think that's impacted on our generation and the generation below us and the one before us, who are second, third generation British Muslims now, the way they view Islam and the way they view the Nikkah?
It shouldn't have, but it has. Unfortunately, I was first generation, you were first generation. We were effectively in the situation of slightly being blind as to what Islam was. We only had our parents to teach us, and they could only teach us what was effectively learn the Quran.
Yeah.
Because do hifz of the Quran. What it meant was another thing.
Go to mosque after school for a couple of hours and that were it.
That was it, because in my youth, I was taught to read hifz, become hifz of Quran. I have many family members who were Quran hifz,
Mashallah.
but I couldn't do it for the simple reason I didn't know what I was memorizing. I didn't understand what I was doing. But unfortunately, it seems things haven't moved on. They have, in one sense, that everybody now has access to the internet. And to paraphrase what one of my scholars once said to me, Sheikh Google doesn't have the answers to everything.
Sheikh Google is a pain.
Sheikh Google can be a big pain because you have to, first of all, understand what your school of thought is. You then have to apply your school of thought. And then you have to extrapolate from Sheikh Google, what are all the other thoughts? Because there are no other schools of thought. There are 5, the Shia being the 5th. The Sunnis only have 4.
Yep.
You cannot pick and choose. It's not a shop where you can say, okay, I'll have a couple of them, a couple of them, a couple of them.
I've seen people do that. What they say, oh, you know, I'm a little bit of Hanafi and I'm a little bit of Maliki, and you know, they kind of mix and match, you know, sweets.
If you go back to the Imams themselves, they never criticized each other. They never said the other one was wrong.
It's just a school of thought.
They just simply said choose one and follow. Nobody's saying it is wrong. Nobody's saying it is compulsory for you to follow me. If you decide no, you want to follow another scholar, fine. But mixing is where you start getting a dilution. But coming back to the topic, because that's another subject we could have a long discussion upon. It is, why do we still practice the system of the Nikkahs in the same way? Well, if you were in Pakistan today, even Bangladesh, if you were to get married there, the Nikkah is valid there, providing you accord with a Muslim ordinance of the Muslim Family Ordinance 1961. Give notice to the Union Council. If there's a second wife, seek permission, etc., registry. You are then legally protected. But those simple documents are being transposed and used effectively in this country, which have no legal bearing and have no effectively recourse
At all,
But
from
any
anywhere,
woman,
anywhere. It's not recognised.
anywhere,
Boom.
she can't, because all it has is name, dates, birth and address,
That's all
nothing
it
more.
has.
No.
Let me ask you something, Yasin, right? Okay, you, as well as I, have been to many Asian weddings, many Muslim South Asian weddings. Now, the way the nikah is done, the way the nikah is written, the nikah nama is written, where you got the name, you know, you got, I will go through it all, but, you know, it's got the groom, bride, parents, witnesses, what they gave in the hakmer, sign, witnesses sign it, jobs are good. And now, in terms of just the nikah, not whether it's legal or not, just in terms of the nikah and the way it's read and the participants and their actions within in taking part in that nikah, is that valid and is that in accordance with the Islamic teachings and in accordance with Sunnah?
It is valid, because, like I said to you, the issue is it's implied within it. If it's not written, then you will have to look at your vertical covenant and across the horizontal, then apply it. Because then you are simply saying, it was okay, I've kept it simple, but my belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hukums and the sunnah means that I will do X, Y, Z.
Right, but
what
can you dictate what goes in the nikah nama and what doesn't go in the nikah nama?
As long as it's not prohibited by Islam, this is the key thing. As long as it's not prohibited.
So, okay, let me ask you a question.
You can't put provision in saying I will drink alcohol every Thursday afternoon.
Okay, we can make it a Friday afternoon. That's absolutely fine. Right.
No, you
I'm just
find yourself in hot wars with that.
Yeah, exactly. The question I'm going to ask is, okay, let's say a bride, she turns around, tells her family or tells the imam at the time of the nikah, says, right, okay, I want to have a clause in the nikah nama that, you know, my husband owns a house, is cashed out, it's his name. I want him to basically put my name on the house before the nikah is fully, the nikah is being read, but I want him to make a promise that he's going to put half of the house on my name or put my name on the deeds, so to speak. Is that valid? Can a bride do that?
Financial demands, that's what you are talking about.
Financial security is what I'm after.
No,
financial, because
no. First of all, you marry a person according to their means.
No, he's got it. I'm just saying, I'm giving you an example. He's got it. So let's say he has got it. Now, I'll tell you the reason I'm asking this, because on a very street level, on a very, day by day, I get a lot of female clients who come in and say, I've had my nikah read, and obviously it's not legally recognized, we didn't register it, we've not registered our marriage, house is on his name, what recourse have I got? And I said, you've got absolutely zero recourse, because it's a defective ceremony within England, so to speak. They got married in the UK. Now, the only way of protecting yourself is doing that either pre or having that something in the contract to say, after we get married or within a certain time limit, you're going to provide X, Y, Z. That gives them some form of security, knowing that there's no legal recourse for them. Now, is that valid?
First of all, you don't need a term of contract for that, because you have the dower, the haq mer, the mer can be specified in terms of what you seek. It can be paid at the marriage, date of marriage, it can be paid during the marriage, and it can be paid at the end of the marriage. So it can be specified. The terms of it can. The problem is the mer is often with a figure of 500, which I mentioned earlier on.
Which is, quite common amongst...
Go back to the time of Nabi Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, 500 dinars was used, right? And that's been picked up and reused the figure 500. But that 500 figure fails to take something not into consideration. What was 500 today was not 500
absolutely
1,200 years ago. There is no inflationary aspect to it. I once tried to do a calculation and try to work out what 500 would be, but I could only get as far as the 12th century in terms of trying to find currency, which I could then compare to what we had. And the figure I came to roughly for the 12th century onward was £67,000 was the figure which really should have been put into that haq mer.
Wow.
But it wasn't. But the whole purpose is to provide security. Now, why do we have to provide security for the woman? Because there's an offer, there's an acceptance, there's a consideration. What's a consideration on part of the woman? Effectively, she is giving herself to that man.
Absolutely.
That's an intimacy. That is something which cannot be returned. If the man gives her £1,000, it can be repaid back. Can intimacy be repaid back?
No.
No. So it has to be quantified then. So how do you quantify? You then say, this is the dower, this is the figures. And in there, you can then stipulate the mayor can go up and down.
Oh, so it can be negotiated afterwards as well?
You can have a variation of it.
Oh, okay, okay. I didn't know that.
For instance, you marry an individual who has, like at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the Sahaba basically had an ingot. That's all he had to give. That was sufficient security. But if that person then becomes a millionaire during the course of the marriage, why can there not be the variation? Because the circumstances have changed, especially if the partner has assisted in the fruits.
And what if the hakmer had already been paid? Can you still vary it even after it's been paid?
That's different, right? That's where...
Because, you know, in our culture, hakmer is usually paid pretty much straight away at the time of the nikah or just a little bit after, because obviously they need to show people that it's been paid as well.
But that's the problem. What they do is they're using an arbitrary figure. That arbitrary figure is to say, right, this is it. Right, this is all you're getting, girl. Money's on the table, pick it up. That's it, you're done. We've settled. But that's not how it should be. It should be, well, okay, you want to pay part today, pay part today.
Yeah.
And in the future, if X, Y happens, then you give X, Y. If you become poor, it becomes A, B.
Yeah, so you can negotiate downwards.
Yeah, you put it onto a scale effectively. But in terms of the talaq termination is what you're talking about, as terms of what rights are, because effectively, if you get divorced and it's just an Islamic marriage, you are a common law partner. That is all you are.
But the common law doesn't exist.
No, but you may have what's called a talata interest.
No, that's different though. You've got that's
a different
that's more to do with contract. Basically, you know, talatas. If me and you owned a house together, would come under talata. If we couldn't agree as to, you know, selling it, buying it, or doing whatever with it. But in terms of the actual marriage, the Matrimony Causes Act of 1973, which governs divorce in this country, that would not kick in because there is no marriage. And this is what I keep repeating to people: you can't get divorced if there is no marriage. It's as simple as that.
You can't. You're absolutely right, and this is where the difficulty comes in. Now, in terms of what I did, I created a model Nikkah contract. It's quite lengthy. It's got numerous clauses according to different schools of thought. It's got and I went to a number of scholars in this country and I showed them what I had done, and I got a pat on the back. But nobody was interested.
Nobody wants to take it on board.
Nobody wants to take it on board.
Now, why? Why do you think that is then?
I asked. Eventually, I thought the first one, well, maybe no. Second one, I'm not sure. Third one, I started thinking, hang on. Yeah. Why am I being patted on the back here? And so I said, look, what's the issue? And I was basically told in a nutshell, we live in the community.
That's the problem.
And I said, well, okay, hang on, just let me get this straight. You live in the community. I'm willing to give you this template for free to use it, to do right. And your view is you live in the community. Well, the basic message was, well, if I do this, I'll get removed.
I know, but this is the problem. This is what I was saying to you earlier. I was alluding to.
It's not a problem.
No, it is a problem though, because the mindset, the community, the system is still there.
No, the system is there because it's enabled by people for their own benefit.
Which is who?
If young people decide to look into this and learn to understand it.
I know, but Yasin, but no, okay, I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you, and you know I do. The problem I've got is on a human level. You see, if you're a girl who's 21, 22, about to have a nikah done, they've had a rishta come through, a marriage proposal, she is not going to have the gumption, she's not going to have the guts, she's not going to have the temerity to turn around to her dad or her elders and say, I'm not getting married until this doesn't happen. I'm not getting married until this doesn't get put in the nikah nama. I'm not going to get married until this is not the hakmer. Because the issue we've got is culturally, they don't have a say over it. Culturally, I mean, when I got married, I'm pretty sure like you got married, you know, we were shoved a piece of paper under our nose and they said sign here, here, and here, and then they flip it over, sign here, here, and here. For all I know, I could be signing anything. Now, the issue is the community. Now, when you say it's not, I think it is. It's that mindset that still prevails, that we're going to do things our way. It's as simple as that.
Well, but in terms of the community, right, you're right in terms of the girl. She's placed in a vulnerable position because effectively she has a wali.
Yeah.
The guardian is acting on her behalf, who normally is the father, or it's another male member of the family who comes forward and says, I speak on her behalf.
Can a girl get married without a wali? If she's got wali's
that topic is not as simple as that. It's something which will take me some time to explain.
Broadly, yes or no? Broadly.
Depending on circumstances.
Okay.
It can occur. Right?
That's fine.
There are people who will cite, there are certain hadiths, and they will cite, well, this hadith, well, you have to look at the narration of the hadith. Is it golden or is it non-golden?
Yeah, is it Sahih or Daif? Yeah.
Yeah. It's something which I can't answer in a nutshell. I'd rather finish the topic I'm doing today.
Right, you're going to finish it, but you're not going to finish it yet because we're going to have to cut to a break very shortly. We will be back and we are going to carry on discussing this about the community and carry on speaking to Yasin after the break. You guys take care. We'll see you on the other side. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need help with your marriage? Do you suspect infidelity in your marriage? Are you struggling to gain the truth over a matter of concern? Whatever the concern, we're here to try and help. Email us for free support today at marriagematters@britishmuslim.tv.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the final part of Marriage Matters with me, your host, Javaid Iqbal. We're talking to Yasin, and without further ado, let's get back to Yasin. Now, we were obviously talking about the nikah and whether a woman could obviously say these things, and it was a societal issue. It was a community-based issue. Your thoughts?
Well, it's more than that, because at the end of the day, what's a community? What's a Muslim community?
But are there Muslim communities? This is my question. It's not Muslim community.
Well, what's a Muslim community then? Are you
you tell me.
Community based upon? Are you based upon ethnic values which you've inherited culturally, or are you based upon values that you've inherited Islamically?
Well, experience would tell me, life experience, and probably yourself as well, that ethnic sort of makeup is slightly more prevalent than the Islamic makeup.
Well, the problem is this then: knowledge.
Yeah,
Why
education.
are people? No, hang on. If I, as a first generation Muslim in this country, and you as a first generation Muslim have been able to open our eyes and see how things should be done, how women should be treated, how their rights should be protected, then why are not the second and the third and the fourth generation, which we're now reaching to, not doing the same?
Communities are still closed.
You effectively, your view is the community has such a control over these individuals, they will not move.
No,
you may well be right.
Yeah, but it's not control. I'm saying it's so ingrained. There's a difference between control and ingrained. I'm saying they kind of grow up in this system, and that's the only thing. But we're going to have to break then, aren't we? We're going to have to break that sort of systematic cycle.
You're saying there's no independent thought. These individuals do not have, they follow a train track. The track having been laid by generations before. They go round in a circle, they get up in the morning, they live their life, they go to work, and one day they get married, they have children, they pass away, and the children do the same.
And I've seen it.
And it's cyclical. Effectively, it becomes cyclical. But where is the knowledge? When they go to the masjid, this is where the imams have to speak. The imams shouldn't be fearful of what the community thinks, because the imams...
That is changing slowly. To be fair, I've seen that. I've been to a few mosques now, and, you know, the khutbah is in English. The imams are relatively younger. You know, they're more broad-minded. They will discuss things which, you know, one generation above us, you know, my dad's generation, they certainly wouldn't even think about broaching certain subjects. And you've got all these sort of, you know, online, quite regularly famous, I suppose, if you want to call them, imams, you know, giving sermons. There is the education, but it's still such a slow process. It's still in its infancy almost. Now, let me ask you something with regards to, again, going back to the whole Nikkah thing and not being recognised in the UK if it's a defective marriage or a defective ceremony. Would it be wise to have your Nikkah done on Sunday and then go to the registry office on a Monday and have it registered? And then that way you're legally protected as well.
Yes, it makes sense in one respect, but in another respect it doesn't, because there's a concept under law which is known as the limping marriage. Effectively, a limping marriage is this. The courts under the Matrimonial Causes Act have the right to dissolve a legal marriage which has taken place in this country. They have no right to dissolve a Nikkah.
It's not recognised.
Because it is not recognised, so what happens is the marriage is limping. It still exists. And what happens is the woman is trapped in that situation. She is legally divorced, but Islamically, she is still married. So no imam is going to remarry her because he will ask, are you married? The answer is yes. Thank you very much. Goodbye. On your way.
I've seen that too many times. I've seen that so many times.
Now, in terms of the limping marriage, the issue is this. Where are the provisions within the Nikkah for the woman? A woman has a right to be released from her marriage. Right? That is effectively what a khullah is. A khullah should never be unreasonably held. But if it is going to be unreasonably withheld, then where is the provision for what's known as talaq al-tawid, which is the right for the woman to invoke the divorce? This position, which is advocated by people, oh yes, yeah, just go and register. Yeah, it works. It gives you legal protection, but Islamically, the husband could turn around and say, I'm not divorcing you. What are you going to do?
Which we've seen a million times, right?
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
She'll say, well, give me a call. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to. Where does the woman go? Sharia council. The Sharia council effectively don't issue khullahs. They are going down the realms of what's called a fask.
Yeah.
A judicial separation really is what they are going down in terms of how to bring an end. Now, there's arguments as to whether they have any validity at all in this country. But equally, I've had imams say to me, well, what's the alternative? What really is there? If we don't allow them to bring the marriage to an end, the woman is effectively then stuck in a situation. But the problem is, having a registry wedding is not always the answer.
No, it's the answer. It's the answer with respect to the fact that should the marriage go south, she's got recourse under the MCA 73 to basically apply for ancillary relief, which is then the division of the assets of the marriage, etc. So I suppose financially there is some benefits in doing that in terms of the division of the assets. Obviously, if she doesn't register it and it's just a Nikkah done in a simple form, as we know it, then she doesn't have recourse to do that to the courts whatsoever.
Absolutely right. So one gives you an advantage.
Absolutely, but I understand the point that you're making that.
But the point is, in order to extrapolate yourself from that marriage, you could be asked to forego all your remedies under the Matrimonial Causes Act. The husband could turn around and say, okay, fine, you sign a consent order, you agree to absolutely nothing, sign here. As soon as you've signed it, I'll issue a talaq. I will release you from the marriage. How has it helped?
It hasn't, and that, again, but that comes down to how one wants to conduct themselves within the realms of Islam.
The minute you have an individual saying to a woman, I am not going to accept your khullah, you know the position.
No, 100%. I mean, traditionally, I'll be honest with you, we know it.
Come to an end and they've been divorced under English law. As a matter of simple humanity, the woman should be released.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It should be
too many
as simple
times,
as that. Again, it comes back.
But it's the last bastion of power, isn't it? It's the last bastion of power that the male can hold over the woman. Is that I'm not going to give you talaq.
The whole point of Surah, when you read Surah Al-Nisa, right? It was revealed after the Battle of Uhud. There are reasons why it was revealed. Now, when you read it and you look at the rights of the woman, then who are we today, 1600 years later, saying that we should control women? Is this the era of Jalil again? Are we re-entering that period? Are we now saying that the hukum and the covenants that we hold so dear disapply, because there's no difference between a man and a woman.
It's the way we apply it, though, isn't it?
The only difference between a man and a woman is taqwa. Taqwa is your piety.
Yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge you on that, not on anything else. And individuals must learn to understand that human rights are propagated by you believing in God. It's your belief in God which makes you treat others better. That is the true essence of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is he an example to us? Why do people say, I will wear this as a sunnah, I will do mishwak as a sunnah, I will wear attar as a sunnah? Well, if you're going to do all that, treat the women in accordance with the sunnah.
Yeah, let's start with the basics.
Very basics. Humanity. If there's no humanity, what's Islam? What is it? Oh, I read namaz, I go hajj, I give sadaqah, I do my rosé. What about the first part, the shahada, your belief? La ilaha illallah? Where is that part gone?
Unfortunately, there are people in this day and age. I'm not saying everybody, obviously that's like that's just a, a general sweep. But
no, it is. Look. I'm not saying I'm right. I make it clear to everybody, these are my personal views.
No. I mean, what you're doing is you're quoting directly from the Quran and Sunnah, which nobody can argue against. I'm making, they're not even your personal.
Will argue.
They're not even your personal views. You're quoting. So I'm saying.
No. I haven't quoted. I've tried not to quote these because I refer to something called Naqsh, the principles of Naqsh. You must be very, very careful insofar as hadiths are concerned, because the Prophet ﷺ is special, and he was special because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his 23-year relationship, you must remember, the Prophet Nabi Rasulullah's relationship lasted 23 years with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that period, he was given rights that no other Nabi was given. No other prophet was given. This is why we say he is the seal of the prophet. He is the prophet, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him to do certain things, which means his sunnah, which is in 3 parts: actions, words, and behavior. All them have to be read correctly to have a proper understanding of what each sunnah means. But then sunnah is recorded in hadith, but the problem is that it's insufficient time for me to even try.
No, I completely appreciate that. I mean, but like I said, unfortunately, with the topics that we're dealing with, they're quite vast. And
but the point what I will make is these are my personal opinions. Each person out there should learn and
educate themselves.
And educate themselves. And educate everybody around themselves. And at the end of the day, when it comes to my turn and my daughter's marriage, there is going to be a contract. If he refuses to sign, well, then I've done a disservice to my daughter as the wali. But I will do my service to my daughter, and if he doesn't want to sign, fine.
Again, it comes down to intention, doesn't it? If you're not going to sign, what's your intention behind not signing?
Well, they're quite happy to go to the registry office and sign, knowing that they are subject to legal restrictions.
Yeah.
They're quite happy. Put your name here, or suddenly, well, actually, 50-50 is going to apply on a divorce. Oh, well, I'll sign anyway. Yeah. What's the difference when it comes to Islam? That's
basically right. Yasin, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have you on again because we didn't even get to the talaq part. So, inshallah, we'll definitely call you back on again. Thank you so much for joining us. Viewers, you've taken a lot, of information today. Hopefully, you can implement some of that. And inshallah, we'll see you again next week with another episode of Marriage Matters. You take care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.
Do you need help with your marriage? Do you suspect infidelity in your marriage? Are you struggling to gain the truth over a matter of concern? Whatever the concern, we're here to try and help. Email us for free support today at marriagematters@britishmuslim.tv.